the last name was Difference.
All right, we are now live and streaming, and we've got John Domini as our feature tonight. Welcome to Virtual Friday's Dire Literary Series. My name is Timothy Gager, and John is gracing us from Zoom, and so anyone in the country can watch him right now, and I hope you're watching on the stream service. So without anything else, John has written multiple amounts of books. He has some Boston roots to start too, but his latest book, which is the Archeology of Ragù,
Of a Good Ragù.
of a Good Ragù, and there it is. It is a memoir. And John is also a fiction writer. He's also writes literary critique and reviews. So without anything else from me, let's turn it over to John.
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot for being here. Thanks a lot. Yeah, this is it. The Archeology of a Good Ragù. Excellent press called Guernica. I've been hearing of Guernica for years. It is a memoir, and as the subtitle says, discovering Naples, my father, and myself. Naples, Italy, where my father is from. Arrived just after the war, arrived in the States just after the war. And there are many stories in the book, many stories, I believe, quite interesting stories, things to do with fighting the Camorra, the terrible mafia of Naples, things to do with fighting the Nazis, who, after all, occupied Naples for nearly 2 years in 42 and 43. And there are other exciting events. But the way they're spaced out for the purposes of the memoir, which has a larger story, it's difficult to read them in snippets. You know, I have to take something from page 31, something from page 43, a big piece from page 85. You know, it's difficult. I'd have to create all these transitions. So I'm going to just start from the beginning, in which I try to set the scene, to get you into the middle of Naples, and also to set up the quandary, the problem that the book is trying to solve. Tim told me that I'd have 6 to 10 minutes, so I have my stopwatch on. First page, Mo, the Neapolitan now. Mo, a grunt, a moo, brought up from the middle of the chest with a thrust of the bottom lip, making for a sudden mouthy shrug, an extreme contraction wrung out of al momento, at this moment. Mo, they say, whatever the moment. Could be morning as you consider taking mass, could be midday, the bikes at full roar in the streets. And here's one bearing down, close, 2 cold-eyed young toughs on the banana seat. Could be evening, echoing with the clack of a woman in heels. A miracle when you consider the cobblestone. And look around, where is she? Where's that intoxicating sachet? Now, could be any of these. You hear a special emphasis in the expression mo lo faccio, roughly, I'm on it. The last syllable, faccio, is a diminishing drawl, and me too, mo, now, Naples. This hub of a Janus-faced siren, to dream up an incongruous creature, bicultural, both Roman god and Greek monster. This city that triggers Baroque aspiration, yet burns away infernally all hope. Incongruous as that creature may be, to me, it remains one thing, always. To me, it's the locus of renewal. A very old metropolis, nonetheless, it left me rejuvenated, remade in midlife. So, me too, I'm on it. I'll find the coherence in this crowded place. After all, regardless of the good it did for me, doesn't the city deserve this on its own? An informed treatment for an eternal downtown. If Americans think of Naples at all, they think of the murderous Camorra and the crap in the streets. A few of them perhaps still think of the incomparable Sophia Loren, born and raised. They think of renewal Hollywood style, one of those stories in which Loren restores the soul of some uptight Anglo, say Jack Lemmon, lucky guy. She awakens him to a primal joy enriched with mozzarella. If Americans haven't seen that movie, they've seen the feminist version. Eat, pray, love. Isn't it pizza that awakens Elizabeth, our heroine? Pizza in Naples? These days, any self-respecting foodie will seek out the same. A margarita, the true pie, with its blistered crust and cooked whole leaves of basil. Those burnt green wrinkles amid the sauce and cheese, they suggest an old man's wilting face. In my mind's eye, that face isn't my own, not yet. Rather, it's my father's, withered by his first heart attack. The final crisis came young for this day and age. Pop broke down despite reaching in his adopted country a level of comfort well above the one in which he'd been born. Away from home, he found the good life. And yet during his final years, I reconnected with his native city. And I reconnected with his native city. It drew me back again and again, Naples, more deeply each time. I'd made previous visits, first in middle school and then in college, but now I arrived nel mezzo del Carmen. My father sick and dying, my marriage more of the same, and always the wrong fit for the job. At loose ends, would you say? My ends were droopy as cooked basil. I had some idea how the place helped, the perspective it offered, tri-millennial and transoceanic. I had a notion it might provide a glimpse of a better outcome. The ululations of the siren don't always lead to drowning. Also, I could see a thing or two or three about Pop. As this city put me around corners, it illuminated his long ago turning points. A few of those looked unflattering, sins of the father. At the least, Enzo Domini faced choices so messy they left stains. He grew up amid hair-raising, agglomeration, and din, for a while under Nazi guns. As for that, the war in the old city, his story took especially long coming to light. Still, bad trouble of one kind or another kept confronting me, poking out of some nook or cranny. It made what I was trying to accomplish look like a party game. Adventures in reinvention. Nonetheless, as my project took shape, I could feel its full adult weight. In order to get a handle on the rest of my life, I needed to know my father and his city. And that'll do for now, the archaeology of a good ragu. Thank you very much.
All right, John, thank you very much. And that was a wonderful reading. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about writing. But first, I was taken by your a quote on your website that you're always glad to hear from readers and thinkers. Do people actually reach out to you?
Yeah. One person in the audience rediscovered me via the website. And I recently got the kind of query that, there's no easy answer. I got a query, would I, in effect, lead a 3-person workshop? That they just found me. They were recent Cornell graduates. And, I've answered, I haven't heard back, which may mean they don't want to proceed. But I said, basically, I need to know more. Yeah, it's good to hear from people. Yeah.
Even on Twitter?
What's that?
Even on Twitter?
I've had forgive my rose-colored glasses, but I've had a pretty good experience on Twitter. I don't do that much there. I keep it when I went on, encouraged to go on, I should say, by my publisher, my editor at Zank Books. I kept I set myself a real simple rule. I'm only gonna do literary things. I'm only gonna post about books, my books, others' books. So a typical post from me on Twitter is, here's a great new book from DeWitt Henry. You should have a look at it, a line or two from it, something like that. Or maybe a great new essay by somebody in LitHub with the link. That's a typical Twitter post. So I don't tend to get, I'm not going to weigh in on the Cleveland Guardians.
Is that a risk, though, to have opinions in social media for a writer?
Obviously, some people have gotten in a lot of trouble. I try to be careful, but really, I follow the same rules I would follow if I was in a literary party. I try not to call anybody an ugly name or something like that. And if somebody brings up a terrible, if somebody brings up a writer I consider terrible, I try to express my misgivings in a diplomatic way, something like that. I probably have pissed off some people with, or alienated somebody with something I said. And what can I do? Then I shrug. There are a lot of other people they can look at. And rarely, I think maybe once, I had to block somebody.
Now, in your new memoir, Archeology of a Good Ragù, the subtitle has to do with overcoming a midlife crisis. How did your midlife crisis manifest in yourself?
Well, it's nothing that dramatic. And yes, I'm not a victim of abuse. I wasn't a drug addict. I got a little fat. But no, what happened was I thought I had an academic career in Oregon, and basically it fell apart. And I thought I had a solid marriage, and it fell apart. So personal and professional breakdowns. And I don't dwell on that too much. Well, I don't know. Read the book, see what you think. I can't ignore it, and I had to understand what what had gone wrong in my marriage and to what extent it was my fault. Had to understand what makes a person a bad fit in an academic situation, that sort of thing. But what was interesting to me once I got my feet back under me was that I saw my way through it by going to Naples and investigating my father's past. Also, just learning a lot more about this fascinating alternative culture. Somehow that set me straight. I always did have work. I was on the adjunct mill, and the real money was over in business writing. If anybody wants to know, the real money is in writing for business, and I got much better checks doing that. Hated it, but that was advertising, business writing. You see why people do it, because it's very lucrative. Just ask Don Draper.
Well, Naples is obviously a magical place for you. So maybe you can tell us why it's magical, because also I know that you have a trilogy of novels, which the Volcano trilogy, which takes place in Naples and uses Naples as a focal point.
Well, where do I begin? But yes, and to some extent it's a mystery, right? To some extent it's just, that's the way the helix doubles, talking about the DNA and the way my DNA works, what it responds to. But I am the most Italian of my siblings. My father had 3 children. I'm the one that took to Italy, Italians, Naples, more than they did. My sister's a wonderful woman, but it's not as important to her. My brother, even less so. So some of it is mysterious like that. I look a lot like the Neapolitan family, maybe that's part of the connection. But when I went there, certainly the antiquity of it interests me. Certainly, some of the things I touched on, even in those opening pages, the women, the food, the criminality, which is scary, but very interesting how they made that work. And the history I've already mentioned, sorry. But if you put all that together, what I saw was a place that had endured several collapses. It was like every few hundred years it had another earthquake, another eruption of Vesuvius. It's a place that's been through one world order after another, going back roughly 3,000 years. That's the figure I use in the book. And that was fascinating. And what is the good life they've found that has allowed them to endure? I posit a few answers.
Well, the interesting thing is, obviously Naples appears in your fiction and your memoir. So when you're sitting down and you're writing, do you have that's a nice dependent variable, right? It's throughout. So when you sit down and you're writing fiction or memoir or like criticism, do you discipline yourself the same way? Do you have the same writing routine for those different types of writing?
Short answer is yes. Pretty similar writing routine. I just finished, right now I'm doing a batch of interviews. You're my last interview out of 4 in the last week. And interviews now are usually via email, written down. And even if I talk like this to the interviewer, we then work it over. And that's been true since before there were computers, of course, but we work it over together. And so an interview becomes a writing project more and more these days. And some would say it always was. Ask Vladimir Nabokov, right? He never did spoken interviews, right? Vladimir Nabokov, it was all handwritten back and forth. Those interviews, I found I had to stop the large project I'm working on now, a piece of fiction, and instead, treat the interview as my day's job for a couple of days in there anyway. Work through the questions, and you, unfortunately, even when the questions overlap, you can't just supply the same answer over and over again. Maybe an occasional line can migrate from one interview to the other. But yeah. So the short answer is yes, I work basically the same hours. I come to the desk and work during the day. The longer answer is, of course, fiction and nonfiction feel differently. And some would say I'm crazy to keep writing these reviews and essays I do. It matters to me. I feel it. I like it, and I get a lot of encouragement, validation. What's that? The psychiatrists call it validation for the reviews and essays I've written. And, that's nice, but I feel I have something to say, to contribute there. And in the fiction, there is more freedom, a feeling of flow, but I love what Jeff Vandermeer says, that you should write for joy, and you should never write in more than a 3-hour burst. That's a wonderful way to put it. I love that. I don't do it even with fiction, but when it's working in fiction, there is this joyous outpouring, this joyous engagement that you want to preserve, and you don't want to belabor.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question about the fiction in your trilogy, but there's also a question here by DeWitt. And DeWitt has, what is Naples' relation to the rest of Italy, especially northern Italy and Florence? And do you have a sense of place in the larger place, the way someone in Iowa City might be in regards to LA and New York City and Miami? And part two, what does Naples think of your portrayal of it?
Great questions. I actually, this is one of the first insights I had about Naples, roughly 1992, something like that. One of the first adult insights I had about Naples is that in Italy, it's a secondary city, but not a negligible one, not an unimportant one. And the comparison I make is it's like LA. It's not as important to Italy as New York is to the US, or as DC perhaps, but it's like LA. It's a very important center economically, and in many other ways, including its sort of legendary value, its beauty, it's a dream place, and it has a number of those same qualities in the Italian psyche. But there's no question, Naples is the South, and Italy is famously divided into North and South, the North being supposedly more advanced, more economically self-reliant, the South being laid back, shiftless, and lazy. And of course, there are many strong racist strains in how the North perceives the South. So that has relaxed. That kind of hard thinking has been relaxed a little bit because a lot of people from the South have gone north to work, but not that much, because there is still a hard right-wing movement in Italy that, one of its bases is the Northern League that actually argues that Italy should be separated. Tutto sud da Roma è Africa. Everything south of Rome is Africa. Awful. Did that answer you? What does Naples think of my work? Well, it won one of the books. One of the 3 novels was translated by an excellent NEA. Let's see if I got a copy here. It was translated. Yeah, I got one, but I'm not going to reach all the way up there and get it. It was translated by an excellent Naples house at the time, an excellent house named Pieronti. It's still a house that has some cachet over in Italy, but after they signed up and paid me, not an enormous, it paid me for the rights to the second in the Naples trilogy, the house began, it collapsed. It collapsed as a publishing house, which happens in Italy the same as anywhere else. And now somebody is talking about bringing it out again. But so Neapolitans haven't read a lot of it. But for instance, 2 people in Naples told me they thought that one, Earthquake I.D, was a wonderful book, very good book. They had very sweet things to say about it. And it was, after all, a runner-up for an award over there. And that was one of the ways John Domini gets over there. I was brought over to speak and read about the book.
Now, when you write a trilogy,
DeWitt's last comment here, I will say that yes, in this book, I was trying to write a memoir that was only partly about me, and otherwise is trying to grapple with worldwide issues, the refugee problem, which is refugees out of Africa and the Middle East, overwhelming in Italy, that problem. The Camorra and the extent to which there is an underground economy running the country, some would say. I wanted to grapple with big global issues, and I hope I did. Yeah, go ahead.
So real quickly, when you write a trilogy and there's 3 interlocking novels, do you feel it's easier to write follow-up novels, or it's more difficult?
All right, I'll answer. Now, this is a kind of very personal question, because I would think every writer that tackles this kind of thing is a different answer. But in my case, it was difficult every time. The easiest of the 3 to read, the quickest, was the middle one, called A Tomb on the Periphery. A Tomb on the Periphery. And the title came quickly, and a number of things came together quickly. And I thought that I had finally learned how to write a novel. But the third one, Color Inside a Melon, was an absolute bear, and took draft after draft, restart after restart. And then even when I got it into the hands of the Zank editors, one in particular, Michelle Dotter, to whom I've dedicated the book, was very useful on a number of tweaks. She made the book better. So the answer for me is no, it doesn't get easier. And I think now, my theory now about A Tomb on the Periphery is that that one came quickly because of because of a phenomenon that Hemingway captured. He said, "You always write best when you're falling in love." He said, "You always write best when you're in love, when you're in that first." And I was meeting and falling for my new wife, and the book is dedicated to her. And I don't think there's any question that gave me some extra energy, fire, something like that.
Now, with the new book,
that's the John Domini theory. With thanks to Hemingway, but I wouldn't urge you to go out and fall in love with somebody new every time you get an idea for a book, Okay.
Otherwise, Elizabeth Taylor would have been the #1 best-selling author time and time again. All right. So when you went to Naples and you were working, and the output was your memoir, without giving away the book, did you end up finding what you were looking for?
Wow, great question. Well, the normal trajectory of a memoir is like this. And for instance, Cheryl Strayed's Wild would be a famous one. I was messed up. I was messed up, and now I'm clean and happy. I was lost, but now I'm found. And so in that sense, I fit the pattern. I managed to find steady work, find a much better partner for me. In that sense, I found what I was looking for. The larger issue, I would say, the thing that sets the memoir apart, that I find out about Naples and how it ticks, I found out a lot, enough to scare me and unsettle me, but enough also to make me something of a Neapolitan. For instance, to find out about my contemporary families, my cousins' engagement with the mafia, and how they've learned to live with the Camorra, it's called in Naples. And of course, the disturbing things that my whole family went through during the war. These are very disturbing things, but I answered the questions I needed to about my father and what he went through. There are questions, particularly concerning, well, just one, for instance. There are questions that the book leaves unanswered, and I had to. The one thing I'd bring up is something to do with the Holocaust, which, after all, once the Nazis took over Italy, Italy had anti-Jewish laws too, but once the Nazis took over Italy, it wasn't just that they couldn't have work, that we're going to ship them all off and kill them. And there is my family was among one of the best things they did in the war is how they stood up to this, and yet there's a lingering question about how much good they did, and I don't want to reveal more.
Well, thank you so much. There's other great questions rolling in, but I'm afraid we're going to run out of time. So I do want to wrap up, and I'd like to thank people for everything and for helping me out. And I really would like to thank John Domini for being here and showing us his new book and reading from it and answering some great questions. You can find out more about John by going to his website, which is johndomini.com, where you can get a lot of information about his latest book and his previous books. There's a lot of books to choose from. So definitely check that out. And it's just like his name.com. So thank you very, very much, John.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody. I hope it was entertaining and enlightening for you. Thanks so much.
All right, and I'm going to now close the live stream on Facebook. If you want to participate in the open mic or in the Q&A in the future, please join our Zoom feed, because that way you'll be able to. And so thanks for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks when our feature is Anna Q. Ross.